Long before modern borders existed, a land on the eastern shore of the Mediterranean Sea held extraordinary significance. This land, known as Canaan, Judea, Palestine, had been home to the Jewish people for over 3,000 years. Here, ancient kings built temples, prophets spoke their visions, and an entire civilization was born. But history is rarely kind. Conquest after conquest swept through this land: Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans. In 70 AD, the Romans destroyed the Second Temple in Jerusalem and dispersed the Jewish population across the world. This scattering became known as the Diaspora. Yet for 2,000 years, Jewish people across Europe, the Middle East and beyond never abandoned the dream. Next year, in Jerusalem. By the 19th century, Jewish communities across Europe faced brutal persecution. In Russia and Eastern Europe, violent mob attacks, known as pogroms, swept through Jewish neighborhoods, killing thousands. Even in supposedly enlightened France, a Jewish army officer named Alfred Dreyfus was falsely convicted of treason in 1894, simply because of his religion. The world was telling Jewish people clearly and violently that they did not belong. Into this darkness stepped a visionary, Theodor Herzl. An Austrian Jewish journalist, Herzl witnessed the Dreyfus affair firsthand and reached a radical conclusion. The only solution to antisemitism was a Jewish state. In 1896, he published Der Judenstaat, the Jewish state, laying out his plan. A year later, he convened the first Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland. Standing before delegates from around the world, Herzl declared that within 50 years, a Jewish state would exist. The movement had a name now: Zionism. At the time, the land of Palestine was under the control of the Ottoman Empire, a vast Muslim-majority empire that had ruled the region for 4 centuries. The population was predominantly Arab, with a small but growing Jewish minority. Then came World War I. The Ottoman Empire fought alongside Germany and lost. Britain took control of Palestine under a League of Nations mandate, and Britain made a fateful promise. In 1917, British Foreign Secretary Arthur James Balfour wrote a letter, now known as the Balfour Declaration, expressing support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. The Arab population of Palestine was furious. 2 peoples, 1 land, 1 broken promise waiting to happen. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, waves of Jewish immigrants arrived in Palestine, fleeing persecution in Europe. They bought land, built farms and cities, and established institutions: newspapers, universities, labor unions. The city of Tel Aviv, founded in 1909, grew rapidly into a thriving, modern metropolis. But tensions with the Arab population exploded into violence. In 1936, Palestinian Arabs launched a major uprising against both British rule and Jewish immigration. The British tried to manage the conflict by limiting Jewish immigration, at the very moment that Jewish lives in Europe were in the gravest danger imaginable. Then came the unthinkable. Adolf Hitler rose to power in Germany in 1933. His Nazi regime unleashed a systematic campaign of genocide against Jewish people across Europe. By the end of World War II, in 1945, 6 million Jewish men, women and children had been murdered in what became known as the Holocaust. The world was shattered. Survivors emerged from concentration camps to find that they had nowhere to go. Many wanted to go to Palestine. Britain, fearing Arab unrest, blocked them. Ships full of Holocaust survivors were turned away at the shores of Palestine. The moral weight of the Holocaust transformed the Zionist cause in the eyes of the world. Something had to change. By 1947, Britain was exhausted, economically broken by the war, unable to manage the conflict in Palestine, and facing Jewish paramilitary resistance. They handed the problem to the newly formed United Nations. The UN proposed a solution: partition the land into two states, one Jewish, one Arab, with Jerusalem under international administration. Jewish leaders accepted the plan. Arab leaders, including the Arab League and Palestinian representatives, rejected it outright. They argued the plan was unjust, that the majority Arab population was being forced to surrender more than half their homeland to a minority. On November 29, 1947, the UN voted. Resolution 181 passed. The partition was approved. By 1947, Britain was exhausted, economically broken by the war, unable to manage the conflict in Palestine, and facing Jewish paramilitary resistance. They handed the problem to the newly formed United Nations. The UN proposed a solution: partition the land into two states, one Jewish, one Arab, with Jerusalem under international administration. Jewish leaders accepted the plan. Arab leaders, including the Arab League and Palestinian representatives, rejected it outright. They argued the plan was unjust, that the majority Arab population was being forced to surrender more than half their homeland to a minority. On November 29, 1947, the UN voted. Resolution 181 passed. The partition was approved. But celebration quickly turned to war. The very next day, May 15, 1948, the armies of Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon invaded the new state of Israel. Arab leaders declared they would drive the Jewish state into the sea. Against all odds, Israel survived. The newly formed Israeli Defense Forces fought off the combined Arab armies, but the war created a tragedy that echoes to this day. Around 700,000 Palestinian Arabs fled or were expelled from their homes. Palestinians call this the Nakba, the catastrophe. Israel's War of Independence and the Palestinian Nakba are the same event seen through two different sets of eyes, and both of those perspectives shaped everything that followed. When the armistice agreements were signed in 1949, Israel held more territory than the original UN partition had assigned to it. Jordan controlled the West Bank. Egypt controlled Gaza. Over 700,000 Jewish refugees from Arab countries who faced persecution after Israel's founding migrated to the new Jewish state. Jerusalem remained divided. The conflict did not end with statehood. The questions of Palestinian refugees, Jerusalem, and borders remain unresolved to this day. But what is undeniable is this: Israel's creation was one of the most consequential events of the 20th century, shaped by millennia of history, by the darkest chapters of human cruelty, and by the enduring power of a people's dream. The story of Israel's creation is not a simple story of heroes and villains. It is a story of two peoples with deep, legitimate claims to the same land, shaped by colonialism, war, survival, and tragedy. Understanding how Israel came to be is the first step to understanding one of the most complex and consequential conflicts of our modern world. And that story is still being written.